Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of videos about games and the people who played them. And now, here are your hosts, Tom and Holly Vasel.
Oh, hi. Welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Tom Vasel, and this is my daughter, Holly, and we're certainly glad to have you with us today. What I've been doing, I've been talking about a variety of topics, but one topic that I've really wanted to talk about are games that are my second top 100, my top 200 per se. See, I love lots of games, and I put a lot of games in my top 100 games of all time, but I played over 1,500 different games, and so the next 100 are just fantastic games, but they just didn't make it into the top 100, but I didn't want to leave them out in the cold. So today we're talking about 106 to 110. So let's get started into those. Here we go. 106 is Beowulf, the legend. Now, the theme is almost a misnomer. I mean, you look at the front of this box and you say, whoa, it's exciting, Beowulf fighting the dragon. Well, actually, the game itself is more of a bidding game. The board is pretty neat. I mean, I think the board, look, only 3/4 of a board. That's, not common. But basically, as the game progresses, you have Beowulf, and he is marching through his journeys, and players are bidding to help Beowulf out. Because the more you help Beowulf out, eventually when Beowulf dies at the end of the game, the person who gets the most points will be his successor, or gets the second most glory. I have no idea. The theme isn't bad, but the bidding is really interesting because there's a chance to kind of up your bid. What you can do is, when you don't have any cards involved in that bid, because each bid uses a different suit. Maybe it's war, maybe it's the horns. If you don't have the suit that's being bid, you can draw cards from the top of the pile and hope you get what you need. That actually introduces a little bit too much luck for some people, but to me, it takes this game from being some dry mechanical auction game into something that's much more interesting. So my number 106 is going to be Beowulf, the Legend, from Fantasy Flight Games. 107, another Fantasy Flight game, is Lord of the Rings, the Confrontation. Now, Lord of the Rings Confrontation used to come in a much smaller box, the size of two-player Cosmos, because that's what it was. But here it's a much larger box. Why? I'm guessing to sell the game. Because, look how much wasted space there is. You have a bunch of these pieces here. You have a small deck of cards here, and that's it. The board itself isn't that big. I mean, it's much bigger than the original board, but it doesn't really need to be. Basically, it's hard to explain Lord of the Rings Confrontation other than saying it's kind of like Stratego, but there's a little bit more to it than that. Each player has different pieces. These pieces represent different characters from the movie. And because the pieces are double-sided, you can use a different combination of people that you can play with. For example, here I have Pippin, or I could use Smeagol. And I can use either one of these. Each person is placed in there. They have a certain value. And you'll be attacking with them and defending with cards. The combat system is one of my favorite kinds, in which each player plays a card face down, you turn it over, you add it to the strength of the character that you have attacking or defending, and whoever has the highest wins. The other person's defeated. However, once you use a card, you can't use it again until you've used all your cards. You have a couple special cards in the mix, and the dark side, the Mordor side, has so much more power and so much more strength. You think they would win every time, but the light side has a lot of different special abilities, and really it's a very balanced game because you'll meet people who swear up and down that the good guys always win, and you'll meet people who say, no, the bad guys always have a chance. I'm thinking maybe it tilts a little bit to the good guys, although if a new player is playing, I'll give them the bad guys because they seem so straight up powerful. But the whole thing is fairly quick game, maybe takes 30 minutes, and yet offers some pretty good depth of play. I don't know if you need this deluxe edition with the larger box, with the extra rolls. It's nicer, but it's really the only one available right now. So, Lord of the Rings, the Confrontation. The next one here is an oldie, a giant oldie, a good one, and one I haven't played in ages. Need to get it to the table again. And that, my friends, is Fortress America. Oh, and if you go to eBay, you'll see, oh, look, Saddam Hussein. Oh, here's the one with the beard. And then every time I pull this game out, people are talking about that. No one cares anymore. So this game, probably bigger than it needs to be, comes with lots and lots of plastic pieces. And when I was a kid, the whole idea of using hover tanks and infantry and supersonic jets, to fight off the Red Menace was really entertaining. And the game itself is just a lot of fun. It's a light war game. One player plays the United States. 3 other players play different sides of the world that are attacking the United States. And at the beginning of the game, the United States is vastly outnumbered. But as the game progresses, the United States gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and the invaders will run out of forces after a while. So what has to happen is the invaders need to capture a certain amount of cities before the United States becomes too strong. And it's just amazingly fun. I have the expansion here, 5th column. I was suckered into buying this off eBay one time. It's basically just a bunch of pieces from another oil game that came close to matching the colors in the game, and it adds a little bit to the game. Back then, I didn't know enough to look things up on Board Game Geek, but I still hung on to it. But the idea, having lasers that can shoot down opponents' pieces, just the whole feel of the game, I found vastly entertaining and still enjoy it. Fortress America, Milton Bradley. Can't get it today easily, but you can still get it on the internet, and if you can, I suggest you do, because this is a classic. Maybe someone will make it. We'll remake it someday. The next game is Way Out West by Martin Wallace. Martin Wallace makes some pretty hefty games these days. Some games that people rave about, Age of Steam and other games of such sort. Way Out West is one of his earlier games, and way back when I played this one, I highly enjoyed it. The board itself is entertaining. It shows different cities and different places to put things, but what I like here is it has different things that you can select. This is very similar to today, what's very popular as the player selection mechanic that's in very many games, but this was out much farther before that. But you can build different buildings, you can buy cowboys, you can start a gunfight, you can buy cattle, you can try and be peaceful, but there's a really crazy cowboy mechanic, fighting mechanic. You can be the sheriff of town, which gives you an extra die. It's all 6-sided dice rolling. The components are okay. I mean, there's really not a lot of strength into the game. It was an early Warfrog game. And the cowboy fighting can be sometimes a bit too random for some people after all the strategy of buying buildings and such, but I like it. It really feels like you're playing some Western-style game. And so, for that, it makes my favorites list Way Out West. And finally, the last game we're talking about today is another giant game. This game was originally called Deflection, but because of some lawsuit or such, they had to change their name to Khet. Now, why do I like Khet? Simple. Because Khet is a laser game. You see I have this in here because the game itself comes in a board like this, and some of the pieces have fallen over and such, but each turn, players move these mirrored pieces around. They're mirrored at a 90 degree so that when the laser hits them, it bounces off, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to set these up and other pieces up to hit your opponent's king, or whatever it's called. If you hit this with a laser, then you win. Or if your opponent hits his own with a laser, you win. You got blocking pieces. You can buy an expansion that has a 2-way mirror. The laser goes through this and is reflected off it. You got pieces that are mirrors on both sides. So you rotate or move and then shoot that laser. It's an abstract strategy game, but it's a really entertaining one because of the lasers. Really, I mean, once I said lasers, didn't you want to buy it right there? So that is also on my list. A couple games that aren't on my list because I don't... let me tell you 2 games that are honorable mentions that should be on the list at this point, probably. One of these games is Age of Steam. Age of Steam is a game that, with its 6 million expansions, maybe that's an exaggeration, probably only 5 million. But as much as I like the game, I like the railroad idea, I think it's been trumped by the Railroad Tycoon. And because of that, Age of Steam just was never getting played anymore. And so while this is probably where it will end up, I don't really talk about it much right now. Perhaps the new edition will change my mind. The other is Princes of the Renaissance. That's another Martin Wallace game. I loved it when I first played it. Had some great times playing it a few times, but it's been years since I had a good chance to play it, and I don't own it and haven't been able to find a copy pretty much anywhere. So it's not on my list right now because I'm not sure. I have to play it again to see exactly where it lines up. So those are 2 that could have made the list, but this is about where they would fall. But that's all I have time for this time. We'll talk some more about some kids' games next time. Until then, I'm Tom Vasel, and this is my lovely co-host, Holly. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.